What has gone so wrong with the Saints rush defense?
Yeah, the thing that's kind of really the most surprising about their run defense is that it's a lot of the same people. And the one linebacker you took out, I think Pete Werner is actually a better player, and Caden Ellis has been probably their best run defender this whole entire season. But it's just kind of like the little discipline things. Like on outside zones this year, they're allowing 4.8 yards per carry. Previously, from 2018 to 2021, that number was 3.7.
Damn.
So, I mean, that's a whole yard difference. And that's the difference between, 4.8 is bad and 3.7 is kind of elite. But it's just guys kind of not being as disciplined as they need to be. So you see a lot of people hitting holes way quicker than they should. And, when you're running those and you're working toward the sideline, getting into a gap too soon is death, because it allows them to cut back and kind of hit the open space. And a lot of that stuff has been going on this year. I think their defensive interior is significantly worse than it's been. And granted, it's kind of the same players, but it's underperforming a little bit. And, the other thing, just in this last game, Demario Davis missed like 2 or 3 tackles. He was in the right place. He got his hands on people, but he was unable to kind of bring people down. So I just think it's just a little bit of a erosion of discipline and deterioration of talent a little bit over time, and you kind of end up in this spot where they're at. And that's a huge issue coming up here. Like Cleveland, if they watch this game, I would go out here and say, hey, I'm not throwing the ball unless I absolutely have to. Like Atlanta could have literally just ran their way to a victory. And they kind of, had that turnover and that ended it. But I've never seen anything that kind of really looked as helpless as that, as far as the Saints defending the run. And it was bad. So these next 2 games, I mean, I think it's huge. And I don't think you really found a solution at this point in the season. It's just they kind of got to just try to be a little bit more sound and stop Chubb and I don't know if Hurts is going to be playing for Philadelphia with that shoulder sprain, but those 2 teams can run the ball, and they're gonna do it against this defense and see if they can stop it.
Yeah, and this is pretty blunt here, Nick, but is there anything, you're coming off a victory, and the first thing we ask you about is something the Saints are still doing wrong. So I want to ask you, is there anything they can do to save this season, make that taste go out of fans' mouths? Because right now, obviously, like, again, coming off a victory against an arch rival, like, it still has a bad feeling to it. Can they, like, if they ran the table, even if they missed out in the postseason, does it change any of the narrative you think surrounding this season?
I don't know. I mean, because look, they won this game kind of in the same fashion that they've lost every other game, and coming out of it, like we covered it almost like it was a loss. It felt like if there was one more possession, like they would have lost the game. It felt like they were lucky to win. So some of the same DNA is there, and I don't know if it's a week to week thing. I honestly think that when they evaluate it, the way it has to be and the way it should be is that they sit back and they say, hey, like, did continuity work? Obviously, I think the answer to that is that it failed at this point. They didn't build upon last year. They took a step back. So then the next question is this the right way to lead us out of this? And I think those are a whole new set of circumstances from what they were last year. And I don't think that Mickey Loomis and them will be prisoners of the moment. I do think that finishing strong helps his case. So whereas, these guys obviously didn't quit, and they came out and they played hard. They got their backs against the wall, kind of felt like here we go again at the end of the game. And they kept fighting, and they found a way to get a turnover. Those are the things that I think are really important, because it says Dennis Allen hasn't completely lost the locker room yet. And if he had, that's where a move I think has to be made immediately. So I think it still is a conversation at the end of the year. And I kind of feel like it could go any which way. I don't think they can run it back exactly as it is. I still think that, even if they win 2 of these next 3, I think there still has to be some staff changes. I think that you have to take a real hard look at the offense and wonder if that's going the direction it should be. There's some stuff there that's still this late in the season doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I just think it's got to be something bigger than just kind of, at this point we've seen the underbelly and we kind of learned some things about what this staff can do in the face of adversity and what they can't do. And I think those are the things that should drive the conversation more so than just the results.
Nick, what about so it sounds like maybe you're intimating there that you got to think long and hard about an OC change. If you made an OC change from Carmichael, and do you think the new guy, like, would the new OC be able to take advantage of someone like Taysom Hill? I mean, a lot of times you may be saying, well, T-Bob, we don't really feel like Pete Carmichael's always taking advantage of Taysom Hill. But when you look at some of the Saints' best offensive performances this year, he has been a critical piece of it. But this is kind of Sean Payton and Carmichael's baby here. If you do change? Do you lose Taysom Hill in the process?
No, I think someone could come in and make use of him. I think you got to find someone that's, creative and can do a lot of different things. And look, I mean, I'm not saying for sure that Pete Carmichael is going to get fired. It just kind of feels like in these situations when someone's retained, someone has to go. There's a scapegoat. And if it's not going to be DA, it's going to be Pete. And if it is DA, it's going to be DA and Pete. So it's just kind of hard to see them coming back exactly the same way. And, I'm not saying he said anything about this, but just yesterday, DA was asked about the defense and the run defense and what they got to do to win games. And he said, ultimately, it's about scoring points. And, we've only allowed 16, 17 points the last 4 weeks. That should be winning football. And, kind of the undertone there is that the offense isn't scoring points and it's tough to win like that. So it kind of just seems like, maybe there's some frustrations there. But I think that, there's just a lot of things too that are just a little bit stale this year. They use motion less than any team on passing attempts in the NFL. And if they doubled their amount on that, they would still be in last place. I mean, there's just things that the league is doing. Yeah, Denver's in 31st and they're double the Saints in that total right now. So, I mean, there's just things that the league's doing. And it's just, kind of feels like it's different than what the Saints are doing. They have Alvin Kamara and they've run 5 screens out of the backfield the whole entire season. Get him the ball in space. One of those plays went for like 40 yards. Try it again at some point. It seems like that could possibly work for you. He's had some issues in pass protection, has been off the field on third downs, but in some of these got to have moments. It's like, where is he? Why isn't he on the field on third down? Find a way to get your best player running the same offense in a place for 15, 16, 17 years with new players that, aren't tied to that. Maybe that's a little bit tough to digest. Maybe there's a simplification that could make things a little bit easier. Like, look at like what Ben Johnson's doing in Detroit. Like, he's coming up with stuff that like nobody in the league has ever seen before. I think it could just be maybe time to try a new path because we have seen that continuity failed. And I agreed with all the decisions at the time, but now that they aren't working, it's, you got to look at it and say, does this make sense? And maybe on offense, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense anymore.
All right, Nick, stay with me here. Don't roll your eyes too hard at me, okay? You're searching for a quarterback next year. You don't have a first-round pick currently. Salary cap-wise, like you're not sure what you can do there. We're talking about maybe changing offensive coordinators. If you look around the league, you see what Jalen Hurts is doing. You can see what Justin Fields is doing. There is a path where you can have a skill set like Taysom Hill in there maybe at all times if you hire the right offensive coordinator. What would you think if the Saints made that move, saying, hey, we're bringing in this coordinator. This is what he's done at A, B, and C. Right now, this is where we have to go. Maybe it's only for a year. Maybe it's for 2 years. I don't know that. But what would that option look like for you?
I think my biggest disappointment with covering this team was that, like, for years we kind of sat there and heard Sean talk about Taysom Hill, and we saw all the things he could do. And then he came out, and it was kind of like pocket passer who can run a little bit. And I think they didn't lean into it. I didn't think they leaned into it hard enough. I think I would have got a little bit more crazy with it and done some different things. So if they don't have another quarterback and that was the path they wanted to try, I could see it. I think it would be a temporary fix. I don't know that it would work long term. I mean, look, they've won a lot of games with him, so that's kind of an unfair statement. But, just kind of watching the process a little bit, there is some stuff with him where it's kind of like his internal clock on when to run doesn't fire when it seems like it should. And then when he's on the move, he doesn't throw great on the move either. And those are kind of the two things that someone with this skill set I think needs to do to kind of be great at it. But there is we've seen winning football there. So I think if you lean into it a little bit harder, I mean, you could probably be a decent team if everything else is going right around the quarterback. And, if making a $20 million investment in Daniel Jones just to be mediocre, maybe you just go with what you have in house and don't spend the money and try to do it and save the cap money. And then, come back in 24 with, your draft picks and you're kind of loaded up with a little bit more money to spend, and maybe you can figure something out there. But if someone wanted to try to do it, we're at the point now where it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, like try anything. Like nothing's really great at that position. Andy Dalton's been fine. But there's really no upside there. Maybe there is some on top tapped upside in Taysom. And look, maybe a new OC gets more out of Jameis too, who is still under contract, and there's a vision there too. So, maybe there's a way to rework these pieces and get a little more out of them.
Man, are we really at the point where $20 million for free agent Daniel Jones is a legitimate path. That's a.
I mean, just think about where you're at right now. Like,
no, I feel you.
You have a piece on your roster that the stats don't lie, the numbers don't lie. Like, when you give him these opportunities, your record goes up. It might not always be pretty, and I'm not sitting here championing for that, but you're kind of limited in what you can do.
If it came down to that or $20 million for Daniel Jones, I would say F it, stay with Taysom for sure. But I'd rather just trade even more picks to the Eagles and get Minshew. No, not really. All right, let's end this with some positivity then, Nick, because Juwan Johnson was fantastic on Sunday. Raheed Shaheed continues to show that he can be that burner, kind of fulfilling that role that I thought Deontay Hardy was going to be on this team. I guess any thoughts you have on those guys, but then beyond that, give us some other positive pieces out of all of this bad that you think will be building blocks for the future.
I like the young core on offense for sure. I mean, you got your two burners. I think that's going to make life difficult on safeties for quite a while. Just having those two guys that can get down the field like that, and obviously Olave can win at every level, and we've seen a little bit more of that from Shaheed. So if he develops a little bit more, I think that they can really stress out a defense. Juwan's really, really becoming a good player. He's tied with Justin Jefferson for touchdowns right now. Really their only red zone threat. And he's just become a good player. If he can add a little bit more blocking to that, I mean, I think there's a legitimate conversation for him being potentially at some point one of the better tight ends in the NFL. The receiving abilities already there. They just need to get that other guy that they thought Mike or Jarvis was going to be, that can kind of, give you that mid-level to short area stuff and kind of be, someone that can make a more contested catch. They don't really have that at wide receiver right now, but I like what they got, and they aren't that far off on offense as far as, the weapons around the quarterback. I like Alontae Taylor a lot too. He's cleaned up his tackling. That was kind of my big issue for him. There was some stuff with him kind of, just getting his hips too far up the field and being susceptible on curls early in the season. You've seen some of that get fixed. I don't know that I take him off the field if Marshawn Lattimore ever comes back and plays again. So I like a lot of what he's doing. And I think maybe even long-term, you're looking at him as the outside guy. And if Lattimore's still on the team, maybe Adebo's the expendable piece at some point down the road as far as those guys, or maybe the guy that ends up on the bench. But I think that they found a legitimate player at that position.
Nick Underhill at Nick_Underhill on Twitter. New Orleans Football is the site. Go sign up for the site today. It is so well worth it, y'all. If you love the New Orleans Saints, they got a lot of exciting stuff going on over there at New Orleans Football. Thank you so much, Nick.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
What are you getting for Christmas?
I got a French Bulldog, so I think we're done there.
Hey, there we go, dude. Hell yeah, man.
Yep.
Merry Christmas to you and the fam. All right, when we get back, more OTB.